Well, thanks, everyone. When my wife got up this morning, she went and checked her Facebook, and the first post she saw was from a friend, and the heading was that if you remember a sermon in the middle of the week, it must have been good. And the title of the sermon was, Little Tweaks Can Lead to Giant Peaks. That's exactly what I'm going to talk about today. And just to make sure that I get this done, I'm not a public speaker usually, so I'm just going to get through this, but I want to make sure you remember the point. So I'm going to have all of you repeat with me, little tweaks can lead to giant peaks 3 times, and then I know at least you'll remember the message, okay? So little tweaks lead to giant peaks. That was weak. Little tweaks lead to giant peaks. Now this one counts. Little tweaks lead to giant peaks. Okay, at least I know you're going to remember what the message was. So by profession, I started out as a photographer. Photography reflects my life work, and I see the world through a lens. I opened my own photo studio in Portland, Oregon, and Nike was my main client for over 15 years. Aren't they cute? Photography's just been an amazing career. But some of the stuff I did for Nike was my favorite. Later, we moved to Maui, and I was able to shoot over 1,500 destination weddings on the beaches of Hawaii and around the world. Each one of them were beautiful and unique and special. But my favorite thing in the world was always shooting humanitarian projects. I've had the opportunity to travel the world with many organizations, shooting photo assignments for them. And it was just amazing to me, some of the images that we were able to catch. One of the times we were in Africa with a medical team, and they were giving medical attention to people that had never had any before. It was an amazing experience, but it was those doctors gave a little bit of their time that made a huge difference to those people that they were helping. Well, I wanted to do my own project while I was there too. I wanted to see if I could find a village that had little outside contact, that didn't know what a TV was or a radio was, that had very little media contact whatsoever, and see if I could teach their youth to tell the story of their culture through digital photography. It was going to be a challenge, but we piled in a truck, and I took 2 interpreters with me, and the 3 of us went through the African bush, and pretty soon we found this village. And we met up with a chief, and he invited us into his hut, and we went in and sat on the ground. And on the way to the hut, I had actually taken a few photos, and I was loading them on my laptop when we were sitting on the dirt, and I came across a photo of the chief and his 2 kids. And I turned the laptop around, and it was the first time he'd ever seen a photo. And he freaked out because he recognized the 2 kids that were in the picture, but he didn't recognize who was with him. It was him. See, they don't have any mirrors in the village, and their water's so dirty, he'd never seen a clear reflection of himself. And everybody was kind of giggling a little bit, but it was just an amazing experience. But the real story was how the kids in the village could not believe that anyone would care enough about them to come and tell their story and help them tell their story. Why someone would come from the other side of the world and even was interested in them? For me, it was just a little project, but for them, it was a huge thing that somebody wanted to know about their story. Well, we were in the middle of the African bush, and talk about ridiculous. This is some kind of ridiculous. We were driving back, and we had hours to get back to the base camp, and the driver said, "We got a problem. We're running out of gas, and the only place to get gas out here is at a terrorist training station. And you have 2 options. You can either get out of the car here and hang out with the cheetahs, and I'll come back and get you in an hour and a half or so, or you can come with us, but the terrorists really don't like Westerners." I didn't like either option, but decided I was going to go with them. I wasn't going to hang out with these guys for an hour. I know how that would result. And so they wrapped me all up, so just my eyes were showing, and they told me to get in the back of the truck, and they said, "Whatever you do, don't make eye contact and don't talk to anybody." That was the longest hour of my life. But we got through it, and we got back to base camp, and we went just a little too far, and that one little thing turned into the scariest moment of my life. Well, today's theme is ridiculous. It's such an interesting and complex word. I looked it up in the Urban Dictionary, and it had a list of related words. There were things like crazy, awesome, insane, stupid, silly, redonkulous, amazing, and dumb. It's like this big contradiction, all in one single word. Now, you can look at the negative part of it and say that human trafficking is ridiculous. It's a ridiculous problem. That it's crazy, insane that today there's over 30 million people trapped in slavery around the world. That's crazy. Or you can look at the positive side. And you can focus on the amazing and awesome people that if they just did a little bit, it could make a huge difference. The billions of people who, if they all just did a little bit, slavery could disappear from this planet. Now, how ridiculously awesome would that be? I want to share with you a couple things that, examples of how sometimes little things can turn into big things. You see, I had the opportunity of running track for the University of Oregon when I was in college, and at the time, it was the #1 track team in the country. I was able to run high hurdles and sprints for them. And I'll never forget, after my first week of practice, my coach came up to me and said, "Hessemer, go over to the starting line, or the finish line." So I went up there and I stood, and he said, "Look at your feet." And so I looked down, and he said, "Leave your heels where they are, and I want you to straighten your feet out." And I did. And what he said made a big impact on my running career. He said, "Somewhere in your career, you're going to win a race by those 3 inches that I just gave you. And if you'll run an entire race with your feet straight, you're going to gain an extra 5 meters, and that could make the difference between making the Olympic team or not." Now, that one little tweak made a huge difference, but it was the first time that I realized that small things could really turn into big things. On a side note, my track coach actually started Nike when I was there. Imagine that. I bet you didn't know that Nike started with a waffle iron and a piece of rubber. Kind of crazy. See, Coach Bowerman thought that if he could make a shoe that had more cushioning, that maybe that would help to eliminate some of the injuries that his runners were having. Well, he made these rubber waffles and cut them out and glued them in the bottom of our shoes, and we started running with them, and it was a pretty unique experience. But at the time, he had no intention or vision of building one of the biggest and most influential and inspirational companies in the world. So, one little correction there made a huge difference. And how ridiculous that something like a rubber waffle could turn into Nike. Several years ago, we moved to California, and I was asked to help start an initiative to stop human trafficking and slavery by helping to stop poverty in villages. Now, stopping poverty is a positive message. Talking about human trafficking and slavery isn't so much. But we focus on the positive, because when we started our work, you see, people that help people in human trafficking and slavery work in one of 3 areas. They either work in rescue, rehabilitation, or they work in prevention. Well, we've chose to work in prevention, and we think that has the biggest chance of stopping slavery in the world. The first project we did was in Nepal. So we decided that if we're going to do a project there, we better go see it. So we got in an airplane and flew over the Himalayan mountains into the far west Nepal, and hopped in another truck and drove for several hours and across a riverbed, and we finally got to the village. And what we found was a village that was trapped in extreme poverty and had no hope. But I knew that there was hope for them, even if they didn't. Now, the greatest need for them was for clean water, because they had to hike through the forest 2 hours every day in each direction to get clean water for their family. And they'd take their kids with them. And sometimes they'd get kidnapped off this path and taken, and they never knew who was coming home. Now, that's crazy. But the good news is this, and this is really exciting. This year, since we went there, over the year, they've dug 3 wells They have fresh water in their village. They're not hiking for water anymore, so they're not getting taken into slavery. But much more has happened. You see, now they have clean water, so they're healthier. They're not walking on that path. They're not getting kidnapped. The kids are back in the village so they can go to school, and the women they have 4 extra hours a day to do income generation. All that because we were able to put in a well. It seemed like a small thing at the time, but it led into something so much bigger. Well, while we were in Nepal, I was posting on Facebook every day, and believe it or not, I got a call when I was in the village, a phone call. Yeah, there's cell phone service just about everywhere you go in the world now. And it was Patrick Moreau, who is the co-founder and a director of Still Motion. It's a movie company that I've been familiar with and admired for years. And he said, "What are you doing over there?" And I said, "Well, we're trying to stop slavery by helping to get this community out of poverty." And he said, "Well, we just finished a movie. It's called #Stand With Me. It's a documentary on slavery. We did a focus group, and the focus group said that it's a great movie, tells the story, but can you show the solution?" So the next day they had a director's meeting and said, "Does anybody know anybody that's doing the solution?" And one of the people in the meeting said, "Well, I've been following this guy on Facebook the last couple days, and he seems to be doing what we're looking for. Call him." So Patrick and I discussed it, and within 5 days, he pulled his film crew from everywhere in the world, and we were in Nepal shooting for this movie. Now that turned into something substantial for Free World. It was great to get our name out there. But I want you to see that something as small as posting on Facebook every single day turned into something much, much bigger. Now the story of the movie is about this photographer, humanitarian photographer named Lisa Christine. If you ever get a chance, look her up online. Amazing photography. And this little girl named Vivian, who was 8 years old, who saw one of Lisa's photos. It was the photo of these 2 boys that were in Nepal, and they were holding hands, about 8 years old, and they were looking out over the horizon, and they both had these giant slabs of granite on their backs. And she asked her parents what's up with this picture, and they said, "Well, Vivian, these kids are slaves. They don't get to go to school. They don't get to play like normal kids. They just have to haul these rocks down this mountain every single day, all day." Well, Vivian said, "I'm going to do something about that." So they looked into it and found out that it was going to cost about $100,000 to free these kids. Vivian said, "Well, I'm going to do it. I make pretty good lemonade. I'll just open up a lemonade stand, and I'm going to sell lemonade every day until those kids are free." Well, she did. And after about 30 days, her dad said, "Vivian, we're just not getting anywhere. We got about $70, and we're just not going to get there like this. We got to do something different." So Vivian said, "Well, why don't we just give it away for free? And I'll let people give what's in their heart." That changed everything. Pretty soon people were given $20 bills and $100 bills, and pretty soon the news got a hold of it. And within a year, Vivian was in Times Square with her lemonade stand and sold the last glass of lemonade that got her over the goal and was able to free those boys. And today, those boys are free. How exciting is that? Well, it all started with Vivian and 1 glass of lemonade, and again, that turned into something huge for those boys. So what are the little things you're doing in your life that have the potential to become something bigger? Do you have a lemonade stand in your life that could free enslaved kids? Do you post things online that could turn into something bigger and positive in your life? Do you have a waffle iron that could turn into your Nike? Pay attention to the little things you do in life. Do the very best you can, because you never know where they might lead. The little things you do could end up being big things that could change your life. And I have a friend of mine, Mark Fonseca, who we have hot dogs at Costco every once in a while, and he is a songwriter. And Mark said, "Can I write a song for you guys?" And I said, "Sure, that'd be great." So we sat down there with a couple of napkins and scratched out some notes about what we do, and he was interested in what we were doing, and he came up with the song "Every Little Bit." We love this song, and it hasn't been released yet. In fact, it just got finished this week. I think they're putting the final touches on it today. But But I'd like you guys to be the first people in the world to publicly hear the last minute of every little bit.
So let's kill what's in our heart. That's a good start. 'Cause every little bit can change our world. Every little bit. We can bring freedom. We can bring freedom. We can bring freedom. With every little bit.
So I really hope that you can see, thank you. We think it's going to be pretty big. It's a pretty cool song. But I hope you can see how ridiculously awesome this world will be when you realize and when you're able to add your every little bit, that you can give what's in your heart. And that might just free somebody someday. Remember that little tweaks can lead to big peaks. Thank you.